Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, August 16, 2022. It's about 10 minutes after 2 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States. Many of you have written to me with very, very profound questions, and some of these questions have found their way into op-eds by my colleagues in the media, all of this concerning the FBI execution of a search warrant at the home of former President Donald Trump now 8 days ago. This continues to be the top of the fold news that all of us are concentrating on. Certainly for me, as a lawyer and former judge, whose job now is to explain to you the intricacies of the law, the constitutionality of the law, the moral propriety or impropriety of the law, as the case may be. So one of the questions is, the Washington Post is reporting that Attorney General Merrick Garland waited for weeks before deciding to give the Department of Justice lawyers and FBI agents the go-ahead to seek the search warrant with the on-duty magistrate, it turned out to be Judge Reinhardt, in Palm Beach, Florida. So if the government says that it had great urgency, that the residents of these documents in former President Trump's home, whether in the safe or in the storage closet, how can that be justified when the AG took 3 weeks to decide whether or not to go forward with the search warrant? Well, that's a good question. We don't know that it took 3 weeks. We know that that's what the Washington Post reported. But if the government says this is of an urgent matter, and it turns out the government sat on it for 3 weeks, it'll undermine the government's argument. It won't invalidate the warrant, and it won't invalidate any evidence produced by the warrant, but it will impair the credibility of the government in the mind of the judge if they're inconsistent. So if they were consistent, this is urgent, 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 they would have they would have executed the search warrant on the president's home sooner rather than later. If they were continuing to gather evidence, if the attorney general was interrogating and questioning the evidence, that would be a reasonable reason for a reasonable delay. But if it was really 3 weeks and if it was really urgent, there's no consistency there at all. Some of you have asked, would I, if I were the judge in this case, support a release of the affidavits, either in actual form as filed or in a redacted form? I would not, because that will impair the government's ability to investigate the case. If the government is going to redact the affidavits, that is, black out or white out the words that it can't reveal, and some of this is controlled by statute, they can't reveal whatever they want, it would render the revealed redacted affidavit meaningless and useless. On the other hand, even though I'm in the media and were I still at Fox, I'd be taking Fox's side on this, which is that we all want to see it so that people like I can analyze it. And there's probably more than one affidavit. We all want to see them so people like I can analyze them and explain it to you. Nevertheless, if I were the judge, I would take the position that this can't be revealed. First of all, it's not supposed to be revealed unless and until there is an indictment. I happen to think, I've said this before, the president will be indicted, but until he's indicted, until he's the defendant in the case, neither he nor anybody is entitled to see what's in the affidavit. One of the other questions asked is a very good one. Did the FBI comport with the parameters on the search warrant? The parameters are, you're looking for classified materials. Do you really think you're going to find them in Melania Trump's clothes closet? I suppose they could have been there, but there's obviously no reason to go through her personal clothing. Why did the FBI seize the former president's 3 passports, 2 of which had expired? One was his diplomatic passport, which is no longer valid, but it's his diplomatic passport from his years as the president of the United States. There was absolutely no basis for them to take the passports, whether they're expired, valid, or not. They should have returned them, and they did return them. Shouldn't have happened. It happens in almost every raid. They justify just swooping up whatever their fingers touch. Finally, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, Republican of Pennsylvania, the only former FBI agent in the Congress, appeared with some of my former colleagues on Fox News in the past hour. And he asked a couple of very interesting questions, which we're going to run for you now, back to back, and then I'll do my best to answer them. Take a listen.
One of the things that myself and my colleagues on the House Intelligence Committee want to see is not so much to see whether probable cause existed for the search. That's a very low standard, but more importantly, on the continuum of evidence collection techniques. So what we want to see is, why did they choose the most extreme, risky, and high-profile evidence collection technique? Does the evidence match that up? That exists in one place and one place only, and that's in the Affidavit of Probable Cause. There would need to be the apex of classified level information, known as the SAP program, Sensitive Access Program, which is typically limited to nuclear information, covert operations, and sources and methods. If that's what existed, then how is it possible that myself, Mike Turner, the Gang of Eight, were never briefed on this if it was such a grave national security threat?
Okay, so the first question is, why did they use the most drastic means to acquire evidence from the president's home? And yes, a search warrant with 50 FBI agents, unarmed, but 50 FBI agents nevertheless is quite drastic. Well, they had tried lesser means. The National Archives asked the president in a letter for documents. He sent back some, but not all. Then a grand jury in Washington, D.C. subpoenaed the president. He sent back a few more, but not all. Then his lawyer wrote to the DOJ, "You have everything." Then we know that letter was a material misrepresentation, because an undercover person, a confidential source, reported to the FBI that's not true, because there are documents in the safe that say top secret. So the federal government did use a gradation of force before it got to the most forceful means available to it. Finally, Congressman Fitzpatrick asks, why didn't he, as a member of the House Intelligence Committee, know about this? Guess what, Congressman Fitzpatrick? You're not allowed to tell the public what secret documents you've seen and what secret documents you haven't seen. You're not in the Gang of Eight. The Gang of Eight are the leaders of both members of from both parties of both houses, and they're not allowed to say what they've been told. So we don't know if Congress knew about this. We also don't know if the president knew about it. We also don't know if these documents that President Trump says he declassified, President Biden reclassified. Much more on this as we get it. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.